We have got a lot to talk about. Welcome to the Real Food Roundup, where I share with you the top real food recipes, tips, and articles. And today we have a lot of stuff to cover. There has been a ton of real food news that's been coming out this past week, so let's get into it. The first thing has to do with BPA-free plastics. Now, bisphenol A, or BPA, you might be familiar with, is a chemical in plastics that was found to be potentially harmful to human health. So a lot of companies have pulled that out, and now it's pretty much the standard with most things to see BPA-free plastics. Well, the University of Calgary recently did a study where they took a look at the chemical that was used to replace BPA, and this is BPS, and they looked at that BPS compound, and from their research it seems that we might have the same problems with that as we did with the BPA. So these BPA-free plastics might not actually be that much better for us. So their recommendation actually from their research is to get rid of all the bisphenols, because you have bisphenol A, bisphenol S, get rid of all the bisphenols in consumer products and really push to just phase them out. Now, this is just one study, and I do want to say that I have not read through the whole actual study. All my information is coming from the reporting on that, so I do want to put that out there. But I do think this is interesting, at least, and it's something that I've personally wondered about for a while. Just with anything, whenever we take out something that is supposedly bad, you know, what we replace it with, shouldn't we be looking at that a little more closely? It seems like a lot of times they find a replacement, but no one really asks, you know, what is the replacement? What is it potentially better or worse or the same or whatever? And this is a case where it looks like it might not be really that much of an improvement. As far as what we should do moving forward as consumers, I think your best bet is just to try to reduce your plastics as much as possible when it comes to your food. Because, I mean, there really is still more research needed in this area, and I think it's better to be safe than sorry and to go with glass and things like that. Now, this is a big topic, and like I said, we got a lot of other news to get to this week, so I'm not going to go through all of the different things as far as plastics and foods and what to watch out for, but I still think it's important and something to talk about. So I'm actually making a whole nother video about that, and that will go up tomorrow. So if you want to see that and you're not subscribed to my channel yet, definitely subscribe. And I'm going to go through kind of how I think about things with food and when you should do plastic is, you know, kind of okay, or when you should really go for a glass, kind of how to prioritize that when you're making your decisions. So be on the lookout for that video. So the next story is about how Chipotle has recently pulled pork from a lot of its restaurants, about a third of them. And this is because one of their suppliers, when Chipotle did an independent kind of just look over, review, audit type thing, they found that they weren't actually up to par with the way that they were raising the pork, and so Chipotle said, hey, we can't take this. This isn't up to our standards. Now, Chipotle is saying that the violations were mostly due to issues with how they were housing the pigs, and Chipotle does want pigs that are in open areas, aren't crammed in tight pens, so they, you know, basically said, we can't take this right now, and we're just gonna have to pull it. We don't have any other choice. So they are looking for ways to get it back in restaurants. They're looking at maybe using different cuts or boosting what they're getting from other suppliers. Now, I'm a big fan of Chipotle, and I think this whole situation brings up a couple big points that we need to talk about. The first one is transparency in the food system. So, you know, when I go to Chipotle, even though I know they try to do things better as far as sourcing their meat, I usually still get a vegetarian option because I still don't know exactly where that meat comes from, like I can when I eat meat in my own home. And the second thing that this brings up is lack of access. A lot of people knock Chipotle for saying, well, if they can't get the meat that's up to their standards, then they just serve conventional and they'll put up a sign. Well, what does that say? Well, I mean, that's not saying anything against Chipotle, I don't think. I think that really speaks to the lack of access to local and sustainably raised meat. They're not really easy to get to. It's hard for them to find these farmers or suppliers that will work with them and that, you know, are doing things the right way. So I think this really speaks to the fact that we need to really promote and purchase and buy things from these farmers who are doing things the right way, because the more we vote with our dollars in that way, the more these kinds of farms there will be, and the more food like this that we'll have access to overall. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is this appetite pacemaker. That's kind of how they're trying to describe it. Basically what it is an implantable internal device, and what it does is they hook up the device to a nerve that runs from your stomach to your brain. And this nerve is called the vagus nerve. And one of the roles of this nerve is to send messages from the stomach to the brain back and forth about hunger and fullness. So the idea is if we can use this device to give electrical impulses to this nerve, that we can interfere with these signals, so that if someone is getting hunger cues from the brain, we can interfere with that so that they don't feel as hungry, and so that they feel more full more easily, and so that hopefully this will help them reduce the amount of food they're eating because the appetite isn't there, and through that they will lose weight. So when they were doing the trials for this, they had 157 people get the device, and then they had 76 people who were implanted with a device that didn't actually work. The purpose of that was for the control. And the people who had the device actually lost 8.5% more excess weight than the people who didn't. Now this device, personally, I do think is kind of interesting from like a scientific standpoint, but I don't think that this is the answer when it comes to the overweight and obesity issue in this country and in a lot of the industrial and more developed world. First off, 8.5% to me doesn't seem like enough. It doesn't seem worth it for the risk of having this device implanted and all that. And while it's not as invasive as like gastric banding or gastric bypass, this is still, you know, a medical procedure. They're still gonna cut you open to put this thing in. It just doesn't seem worth it. Because if you think about it, the people who didn't have the device, let's say they lost 100 pounds each. So that would mean that the people who did have the device would lose 108.5 pounds. And that just doesn't really seem like big enough difference to me personally to justify this device and any other risks that might be involved. Some of the people who had these devices in the study did suffer from some side effects, which isn't surprising because most of these things do have side effects. So there were things like nausea, pain where the actual electrical impulses were being sent, as well as chest pain, heartburn. So there are some other things that are coming along with this. Plus, we don't really know yet the long-term implications of sending these kind of electrical impulses to this nerve. I mean, if you think of how often you eat, and if you're having this device send impulses, they're talking about right now how doctors would set the, you know, how strong the impulses and stuff, but that eventually maybe the person who actually has the device would be able to control those things. But it just seems like something that's kind of intense and not giving that greater results. Plus, I just feel like, I mean, when we think about what it really is, like, we are having trouble eating too much, so the solution is to cut ourselves open, implant a device that electrically shocks a nerve that runs to our stomach to stop us from eating as much. And the other thing is this overweight and obesity problem really a matter of appetite? Because I mean, now there are people who might have different conditions that cause them to not have great hunger cues or not really get full when their body is full. You know, there are conditions where that kind of thing happens, and maybe this would be a solution for those people. I'm not really sure. But everyone who's overweight and obese, that is not their problem, because 2/3 of Americans are overweight or obese, and not 2/3 of the country does not have some sort of issue with their hunger signals. It's more of an issue of something else. So people aren't stopping when they're full. If this makes them full, this device, are they still gonna stop eating? I don't really know. I mean, because people are already eating past their fullness a lot of times that are in this situation in the first place, or they're, you know, they're eating for other reasons, whether it be emotional reasons, or it could be social pressures to eat, or it could be that they aren't eating a lot of real whole foods. They're eating a lot of processed junky foods, which usually don't make you feel as satisfied because they don't have really any nutrients or fiber or anything in them. And then also socioeconomic status, like access to food. There are all of these factors that go into our food choices and how much we eat and our weight, and most of them don't really have to do with appetite. I think if people were listening to their appetite and paying attention to their hunger and their fullness cues, then we probably wouldn't have as big of a problem with this, because people wouldn't be eating mindlessly or stuffing themselves until they feel sick. They would be much more in tune and aware with what's going on with their body. In the end, real whole foods and intuitive eating, which means you're paying attention to your hunger cues, you're eating when you're hungry, and you're stopping when you're full. That is the key to weight maintenance, unless you do have some sort of medical condition or other things that are causing problems. But for most people, that's not the case. For a lot of people, it's just that, eating well and really paying attention to what your body is telling you. And I think if we work with that, that is probably a much better way to go than this device is for most people. So that's it for this week's Real Food Roundup. And let me know in the comments, what do you think about all this stuff? I mean, there's so much to talk about, right? We've got the whole plastics thing, we've got the Chipotle and the pork thing, and we have this new implantable device for weight loss and weight control. So I would love to hear your thoughts on those. I'm sure there's a lot of opinions, so definitely share those in the comments below. If you're new and you want more information about a real foods lifestyle, then make sure you subscribe to my channel. Eating a real foods diet is so important for your health, and it is important for weight control as well, but it's not always easy, especially when you're just in the beginning, right? But I know that if you have the information and the tools and the resources and everything you need, that you can totally make it happen. And that's why I make these videos, because I want to make living a real foods lifestyle as easy for you as possible. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your real foods journey. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.